You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Welcome to another episode of The Ready Writer. Kristine Raymond is our guest writer today. She is author of 20 plus books, but today we will be discussing her latest book, Finagled. Let's take a listen at our conversation together. All right, so the first question I have for you, were you always looking to be a writer as a child?
No, not at all. It wasn't even on my horizon. I kind of did the teenage angsty stuff where I wrote poetry and, copied down lyrics to songs and that kind of thing. But no, I didn't even know this was in me until about, well, a little over 7 years ago. And a girl I worked with had self-published a few books, and I tell this story all the time, but it truly is how I got started. She had self-published a few books and she was telling me about the process, and I thought, well, that sounds cool. I've never written a book before. Why not write a book? Let's see, what's the worst that can happen. And I went into it with the intention of writing one book, just one. And as I was writing Here to Stay, which is the first in the Hidden Spring series, the idea for two more stories came about based on secondary characters. So I'm like, okay, I'll write three books. And then as I'm going on, it just kind of ballooned on from there. I thought I was ending the series at 8. A ninth book ended up popping in unexpectedly, and I plan on releasing a 10th book in that series this year. But it just, I don't know, like ideas. I have so many ideas. I will never be able to write them all. I will not live long enough to write all of the ideas, story ideas I have now.
Awesome. Well, you kind of said it, but I want to go further into it. So, what actually was there a force or something or someone that really inspired you? Because so many people have that story. Oh, I'm going to write a book, or I want to write a book, and then they talk themselves out of doing it. So, what was it that made you talk yourself into doing it?
I think it was just the idea that it was an option to do. I'd never heard of self-publishing, and Laramie Briscoe is my friend who is the one that, she kept talking to me. She had been doing it for a few months and had several books out, and she helped me through the process and walked me through everything. And it was just like, as soon as the idea was planted, I'm like, excuse me, it's like, wow, why didn't I know about this? Like, why didn't I know this was something that was inside of me? And I really believe that we don't necessarily know all of our passions from an early age. I think it's things that we discover as we travel along, and different people, we meet different people and we get exposed to different things, and we hear a new type of music, or we read something, and then all of a sudden it just sparks something inside of you and you go, wow, yeah, I never even thought of trying that, but let me see what happens. And then once you do it, maybe it's like, oh, okay, that was terrible. I never want to try that again. That was the most awful thing in the world. Or it just like is like, wow, I never knew that this entire universe existed and I want to be a part of it. And that's kind of what writing was for me. I didn't I, I mean, I've read my entire life. My earliest memories are of being read to by my mom or my sister. And then, I always had books, and I always signed up for the book clubs in school where they'd send out, it's called Scholastic, and they'd pass around these flyers, like I think it was like once a month, and you got to check off the books. And I still have some of those on my shelf. I mean, I always loved reading, but as far as like picking up a pen and writing my own book, nah, wasn't even there until it was. And I can't imagine not doing this. Last year, 2020, the dreaded 2020, I sort of took an unintentional break. I didn't say to myself, okay, I'm not going to write this year, but because of life, because of other things that were going on in my life, I ended up not writing. But I never lost that. Like, it never became okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. It was just all right, I've hit pause. And now I've unhit pause and now I'm writing again, and I'm very excited about it. I'm excited about the new books that'll be coming out, and the books I want to write, and the new story ideas that I don't have yet that I know are going to pop in there. And yeah, that was a very long answer to your question.
That's fine. So, talk about your book, and please correct me if I'm mispronouncing it. Finagled?
It's finagled.
Okay.
So finagled is my first cozy mystery. It is a Finn's Finds mystery. And the main character is Finn Bartusiak. So all of the titles in all of the books in the series will be a play on the word Finn. So we have finagled. The book I'm working on now is Finicky Eaters. But I digress. Anyhow, I did not intend to write a cozy mystery. That was not the plan that was up here when I sat down. I've been writing romance for, well, 7 years, 6 years, I guess, by then. And I thought, I want to do something different. And I really like reading thrillers. I mean, I just love that whole thing. And I had this idea for a thriller. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to write. And I sat down, and honestly, the first paragraph, I'm like, this is not a thriller. There's too much humor. There's too much quirkiness. This is a cozy mystery. And Finn, it's hard to explain how characters and plots and everything come to you, because I think a lot of people think that you sit down and you plan out every aspect, and some authors might. I am not that author. I'm definitely a pantser. But I didn't even really know a whole lot about Finn when I started writing her. I knew that my character was going to be a single woman who owned an antique shop. That's pretty much what I went into that story with. And as I wrote her, she took on all of these aspects that I just absolutely love. And I will say, some of them are like, some of it's my personality. I mean, there's a lot of me in Finn. I think more than any other character I've written, she has a lot of me in her. I mean, it just, I don't know how else to explain it. And even now, and I'll get to finagle in a second, because I know that was your question. I'm sorry. But even now, like writing Finicky Eaters, working on that, I'm finding out new things about her personality that I didn't even know or even try to put in there intentionally. So back to Finagle. It's my first cozy mystery. And Finn is very happy in her life. She's early 30s. She's single. She has her antique shop. She has her family. They have Monday night dinner, every week. It's a tradition. She's very much loves to eat. She loves Polish food. Her nationality is Polish, so her grandmother cooks all of these delicious Polish dishes, and she has her basset hound. I mean, she just her life is perfect as far as she's concerned. She's really not looking for anything. And on the same day, a shady looking customer brings in this writing box, this mahogany and brass writing box that she just is absolutely drooling over. And he offers to sell it to her for a really low price. So the alarm bells start ringing. She knows that this is just too good to be true, but she can't resist. I mean, she wants this box. And as she's, he leaves, she pays him. As she's checking it out, a piece of paper falls out of it, and it has this code written on it. So now she's really intrigued about, okay, what is this code? What could it be? What's it lead to? Does it lead to buried treasure? All of this kind of stuff. As she's dealing with all of that, her secret crush from high school walks into her store. She hasn't seen him in 15 years, and he walks in and he asks her out on a date. So all of a sudden, in this one, like honestly, within this 1/2 hour, her whole life sort of goes from what she thought she wanted to now all of these new aspects. So the story follows her trying to figure out the code, trying to decipher the code with the help of her, maybe is he her boyfriend Spencer? We don't know. We have to read the book. And her family and her friends, and her best friend is a police detective, are kind of sort of, because Finn can kind of be a little dramatic sometimes. So they're sort of like, okay, some of the things you're saying, you're sort of imagining it. It's not happening the way you think it's happening. So she kind of sets out to prove that she's not imagining things, and therein lies the mystery. And I won't say anymore because I'll give it away, and I don't want to do that.
So did it write itself, or was there some inspiration in real life or in fiction that you've read that wrote that story as far as the box coming in with the code?
That story completely wrote itself. The only, aside from some of the personality quirks that I mentioned, like Finn has a lot of squirrel moments, which I will admit to. I do too. I've already proved that. Be talking about something and then go off on something else. We both owned a basset hound who suffers from color dilution alopecia. And my basset hound, and unfortunately he passed away last year, Bruno, but he was bald over most of his body, furless, I should say. He only where he was white did he have fur. And since he was a predominantly dark colored dog, he was bald. And so that part I put into the story. And Finn's dog also suffers from that malady. but the rest of it, I mean, again, there were a lot of pieces of me. The setting for the story is Port New, which is a little coastal town, a fictional coastal town in New England, and I grew up in New England, so that part's right. And as I said, eating the Polish food, and I just, some of the physical aspects or physical characteristics of Finn, I kind of modeled after myself a little bit, and not necessarily the complimentary ones, but that's okay, at least in my eyes. But yeah, it just, that story took off, and it was just so much fun to write. And I hope fun to read. I hope readers, I mean, it's gotten really good feedback. I've gotten good feedback on it. So I really hope that people enjoy it. I hope they love reading it as much as I love writing it.
So going back to your first book,
Mm-hmm.
When you were done with it, talk about your publishing process. How did you start? How did you know where to start? And were there any surprises along the way that took you off guard?
I think the whole thing took me off guard a little bit, honestly, because I did not know what I was doing. I mean, I knew nothing about it at all. And again, thank you so much, Laramie, because if it had not been for her and some other authors that I met through her who really helped me out, and that's what this whole thing is. We write alone at our desks or wherever we're writing, and it's a very solitary process, but there's also this huge community of people that are just so willing to help. And yeah, honestly, you can't do it by yourself. You really can't. But I learned, again, going into it, I didn't know what a formatter was. I didn't know, honestly, what a digital book was. I didn't have a Kindle at that point. I didn't read ebooks. I didn't even know those things existed. So it was completely brand new to me. And it was exciting, and it was really scary. And I can remember when I hit the publish button on Amazon, I uploaded my book and I hit publish, I started crying, because it's like all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I did this, but now the whole world is going to judge me on it. I mean, that was kind of my first thought, was like, and it just, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of like a specific thing that was like, oh, I didn't expect this. It was more just this whole process of, okay, finding a cover designer and seeing my cover for the first time, and that moment. And even prior to that, getting in touch with a photographer who took the pictures, had the cover models and took the pictures for the cover, and like choosing that picture that I wanted, and all of those kind of things, and the mistakes that I made, and learning from those, and learning that if you make a mistake, it can be undone. Like, there is nothing in the process that you cannot fix, whether that's a mistake in your book. If you find a typo after you've formatted it and you've published it, that can be corrected and a new version can be uploaded. If you size your cover wrong, that can be fixed. Like, there really isn't anything that I found that if you mess it up, it can't be made right. And I think that took a lot of the pressure off, although not necessarily at the time. I think it was more afterwards, once I realized all that, that it's like, okay, you know, it's not the end of the world that you forgot to do this. You can go back and fix it.
Cool. So you've already answered my next question. I was going to ask, what are you working on now? Do you know how many books, or you're not sure how many book the series is going to end up being?
This is going to be an open-ended series. For as long as Finn is talking to me and I have fun writing her, I'm going to go ahead with those books. I will say I've already made 5 covers, I believe. 4 covers. 4 or 5 covers. I can't even remember. And I have, I think, 26 titles where I just sat down one day and just played with the word Finn and how I could make that into titles. But as far as, you know, a definite, I don't know. It's just, again, how much fun I have writing her, if she's talking to me, you know, what other story ideas come into my head at the same time. I mentioned the Hidden Springs book I'm going to write this year. I'm also starting a new series this year. And I just, yeah, I don't know.
Okay. No problem. Last question I have for you. If you could co-author a book with any author, they can be dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a toughie, because there's so many authors out there who I love and admire, dead and alive. um, you know, I think I'd want to do one with PJ Tracy, because I love her Monkey Wrench series, and I know that she is really good at co-writing because she co-wrote with her mom, who passed away a couple of years ago. But that's how Monkey Wrench started, was the two of them writing together. So since I don't know how to co-write, she could kind of like guide me through all of the things I don't know how to do. But and she writes, you know, kind of thriller suspense sort of books. So that's my interest at the moment. So yeah, that would be fun, I think.
Well, that is all the time that we have today on this episode of The Ready Writer. I want to thank our guest, Kristine Raymond, for taking the time to share her journey and story with us. And of course, as always, audience, viewers who are watching, thank you so much. Have a great day.